hmm Yeah, greetings. So today is a day of some sharing, some short share. And as I just reason with this whole program of forgiveness, that we're given by religion, you know, it's become apparent that it's not, it neutralizes really our common sense. Forgive and forget. We're told to forgive and forget. And it doesn't appear that it's serving us. Now, all these different words in the English language, as we can see, the context of the word is constantly being flipped around. At this point, I think it's more practical, from my experience, to deal more in the practicality of release and remember, right? To release so that the memories of trauma doesn't have a hold on me and I'm not triggered and constantly in the past or feeling down or beating up on myself, but to release the experience and put it into a perspective so that I can learn the wisdom of what happened, what led up to incidents, the results, what results do I want, to put things into perspective, in particular to see patterns. So release makes a lot more sense. There's so many different things that we're told that we don't even question. So it's occurred this endless amounts of programs, and there's been endless conditioning of us not questioning the context of things. Different things that are said, universal truths that are mixed with a lot of lies, contradictions, and so to weed through all of the confusion that really neutralizes us and our capacity to see what is actually happening and take an appropriate response that is beneficial to us than others. I invite folks to reason with the whole program that we're told to forgive and to forget. For example, the young man that went into a church and killed a whole bunch of folks, and as soon as the incident happened, people started praying for the young man, and you hear quotes of "Forgive them; they know not what they do." Predators make very conscious decisions to do what they do. And the perspective of religion that we have been given often neutralizes our capacity to respond appropriately, to respond when it's time to move ourselves and young people and children out of harm's way. We're so busy begging for forgiveness from an invisible entity that we haven't put into a common sense, practical context, that we're not dealing with things as they're happening in real time on the ground. So we're so bent on this intangible, chasing this intangible forgiveness, that we don't take appropriate responses to even protect ourselves, or our children. So to put something in perspective, something traumatic that's been happened or somebody's been victimized, so that you can move on and function emotionally, that makes sense. But for someone, or for it to be insinuated, because it's a societal program, that we forget, makes absolutely no sense in the context of not replaying it over and over when you need to be focusing on a task at hand. That would not be the time to constantly be replaying a trauma. Quite often the trauma is being replayed and being triggered involuntarily. Thus, that's why it's trauma. But to forgive and not have gone through a process of assessing what happened in the details, what led up to it, what can we learn, taking a corrective action and an appropriate response, makes no sense. There are some basic programs that um, render us neutralized when it comes to responding appropriately, and thus we find ourselves as a collective, um, as a cultural and ethnic group, stuck in certain patterns, particularly chocolate folks in the Americas, but not limited to that at all, throughout the diaspora. We're playing constant patterns where we're being preyed upon and making ourselves available to predators um, in religion, on a global scale, because something is not processing. And part of it is the programming that we receive around forgiveness. I mean, folks that have a track record, it's like We're not comprehending the wisdom of the scorpion story, right? This is a story we've all heard, and there's a lot of wisdom there, lots of universal truth, but there is a disconnect somewhere. A scorpion has a particular nature, and so if we observe what's happening in real time, we are sympathizing with a scorpion. We are sympathizing with predators. We're sending financial support to known predators. So we're funding their schemes, their campaigns. We're funding what predators do. It makes absolutely no sense. So um, some simple wisdom we're not getting. And so when it stings you, when it violates you, when it violates others, when the predator violates others, we flip back into the program of forgive, forget. Let's move on. It's uncomfortable. Let's not talk about it. This person's our leader. This person's is our elder. This is human behavior. It exists in the chocolate community and all communities. But the forgive and forget, I it's not working. It has not produced the desired result. Because if it did, if there were consequences for violating women and children, a lot, uh, there's a lot that will be cleaned up. There are a lot of people that would not be exploiting others and exploiting innocent and vulnerable young people if there were consequences. If there were consequences for violating a young girl of 11, 12, 16 irresponsibly, then predators wouldn't do what they do. If there was a physical consequence, if there's a financial consequence, we don't inflict any consequences on predators. There are no group consequences for scamming. There's no consequence really for rape. There's a whole system that takes, it's like people can't figure out. Am I saying going out and lynch people? No, but I'm saying we can't seem to comprehend that there are consequences. There are natural consequences. When everybody wants to talk about going back to nature, nature has consequences. Nature has consequences. You do something, you get a specific kind of, you get a response from nature. You get a reaction and a response. So we're so on this forgive and forget, forgive and forget. It's become glaringly apparent that that program and several other basic programs have neutralized our common sense to the point we are literally sending funding to predators. We feel sorry for predators. We side with predators. We have women who are siding with men who are irresponsible with their genitals, that don't take care of their children. They don't run any kind of background checks. I wasn't raised to run background checks on people that I engage with, and this goes for men folks too. There's no responsibility or any accountability. So I question the forgive and forget. And what makes more sense at this particular point in time, based on experience, is release and remember. Release. Put situations in perspective. Understand what led up to them. What was there that I was ignorant or that we are ignorant of individually as a collective. What wisdom that we need to hold on to and remember so that when we see the pattern, we can distinguish from our preferences and our likes and not be distracted by entertainment and likes and preferences and take an appropriate response, even if that appropriate response is to, as my mother would say, this excuses Cassia Spatula, is to feed people with a long-handled spoon. That's some practical wisdom. But it applies to the person telling you too. Feed people with a long-handled spoon. Keeping a respective, healthy distance with folks who you have not vetted properly. I don't care how much you like their locks, how much raw foods they're eating. They could be in 50 million gardens. You don't know people. And after the damage is done, I can say, and it's not just women, with young women and young men, if they're tampered with and damaged, quite often that affects folks for the rest of their lives. It alters their whole paradigm and their perspective. It's not something that you could just say sorry for and you can change. As a mature adult, I have a bit more resilience than a young person, but they're wide open and deeply affected when older adults, male and female, are tampering with them, their body temples sexually. if we look at where the current culture is, it has folks and young people open to thinking that their body is just like shaking hands and anybody can have easy access, that it means absolutely nothing. In our maturity and all that we have been through, we can see that that is not the case. You know, I just invite folks to think critically about the whole forgive and forget. Because automatically to forget would mean that you don't remember. And so, how could you have any wisdom if you don't have any memory? If you don't have memory of what has happened historically, and again, this applies not only to cultural groups or folks of other colors, even within your own community. If you don't have wisdom, you're destined to make the same mistakes over and over, the same errors in judgment. So rather than be distracted by good and bad and evil, we're destined um, without a clear perspective, we're destined to make choices and decisions in ignorance, right? Without having the facts, because we're distracted. We don't have enough information. If you don't have information about what's around the corner, you go around that corner and I realize it was a big pack of dogs over there, or there was danger around the corner. So you keep going around the corner, and the people coming after you keep going around the same corner. It's basic. It's not making any sense. The other thing with this whole forgive and forget program is that there's a trend right now of enabling predators. In addition to sending them funds, many folks, this can definitely be seen with women, not limited to women at all, are seeking the favor of the dominant predator. Many folks around the globe, if you have a bully and the bully is beating you down or beating you back to school every day, many folks will want to make friends or form an allegiance with the bully so that they're not bullied and they're not beat up. So many folks are aligning with the bully, maybe not because they like the bully, but they just don't want to get the wrath of the bully, or are so in fear of the bully and just hoping that they're not the next one, that they side with the bully, and also perhaps even start to admire the bully because the bully is on top, the predator is on top. So it appears, in order to make sense of how so many chocolate in particular, women and chocolate women in particular, are enabling predators. It is absolutely astounding, but it is also very, very revealing. It is astounding how many women and even mothers are enabling predators. But it's very, very revealing. The very fact that we're identifying with the predators, the dominant predator who is on the top, who is inflicting the consequences. In a sense, if we really think about it, not from a sense of a point of perspective of intellect, it would make sense that you don't want the wrath to come down on you, or if you have an allegiance with the predator, you will receive the favor of the predator. You will receive the benefits of being in alignment with the predator. It happens on a smaller scale and on a societal scale. Whoever is more in alignment with the values and does the bidding of the predator will get the least amount of consequences, or they'll go to the other one who's not falling in line rather than the other person. Because we have to be able to make sense and see what is the lesson and what is being revealed by men and women, but particularly I'm saying as a woman and a mother, the amount of women that are literally enabling predators coming to their defense, rationalizing their behavior, sending them monetary funds. We have known predators who folks are giving large amounts of cash to bail them out, to pay their bills. And what it essentially is doing is letting these predators out on the street. So there are women and mothers that are enabling these predators to go and continue preying upon other women and children in the community, which sets off a whole ripple effect in the whole community. So it's interesting as I reflect on this particular character, Joseph Robinson. He tells the story of Asara Set. So for those folks that are familiar with some of the Kemetic mythology, or some of the lessons or the stories of the Kemetic legacy. It tells the story of Asar, a set in Nephthys, um, or the mates, the multiple mates of Asar, who was the green god. And all this stuff, there are some positive lessons, but again, a lot of universal truths are twisted. As Joseph Robinson tells it, it was one of his mates, or one of Asar's mates that had mercy on Set, or this chaotic energy. And there was a point in which there was an opportunity to vanquish or do away with Set, but one of the mates, at least as he tells the story, had mercy on him, and so he was able to stay alive and run amok. And so it's very interesting. Almost everything, a lot of times the predator is telling you the quote unquote truth, but it is being twisted, and the context is being twisted. Because as the person is sharing this, you don't think to apply it to the person that's telling it to you. Again, as you are sending your funds and enabling and letting these people know that it's okay without cross-referencing them, you are enabling them to continue to be out on the street, or to run scam or run game on the next young woman, or the next vulnerable young adult. And it's very important that we become able to see patterns, because a lot of folks and a lot of young people think that they're running from one thing, whether that's the trauma that has gone on in their households, um, or in their religious group, something traumatizing, without a frame of reference. Young people are running from one thing, and they're running right into something else, thinking that it's better, and not really having a frame of reference. Yeah, not really having a frame of reference for them getting into something just as deep as what they're coming out of. So the fact that folks are protecting, siding, defending predators, making sure that the predator eats, it's one thing. No one wants to see somebody suffer, but again, it's the scorpion. You're protecting a scorpion and a predator who's going to turn around and do what it is in the nature of a scorpion to do. So all of this keeping alive, forgiveness, release the story, the hold it has on you, and putting it into perspective. So when the pattern shows itself, you can respond in a way that is appropriate when it's time to respond with something appropriate. Because if predators don't receive consequences, they continue. Bullies don't stop. You can't appease a bully. They just get more puffed up, And the thing is, the person that's giving you the wisdom or the con, you don't expect them to con you. So it's the most perfect place to hide, what you want to do. Is the person that's giving you the heads up, on all the other cons. So you giving them a big up, not expecting them to con you as well. And lastly, our common sense is neutralized. Corrective action is neutralized. All appropriate responses are aborted when we forgive predators. Releasing and putting into perspective is one thing, but to forgive and to forget automatically neutralizes and aborts any kind of corrective action, and any kind of consequences or accountability. So, to give a predator the benefit of the doubt is very, very dangerous. And women are very, very vulnerable to this, because we're emotional creatures. We have babies. We have a lot of feelings. It is what it is. No matter what kind of outfit you want to put on, there's certain things that are hardwired into the women who bear children. It is what it is. You can beg to differ. But we give the benefit of doubt, or many of us give the benefit of the doubt to people, particularly at this point, who have demonstrated their track record. And there is no benefit when there's already established doubt. When someone has demonstrated a track record of questionable behavior, not being transparent, not making information known until they've been busted with certain information, and scrambling to yet again to twist the information. When they have a track record, or there's, no track record that you, even if the person has no track record of anything you can find um, online, if they don't have a track record and you don't have experience and long-term experience in certain situations, these are not people that it would be wise to let into your circle again in the most tangible way, economically, into your economics, your finances, into your body, or around your children because they have not been vetted properly. So be wary of folks where there is a track record of behavior because you don't have any solid evidence that they have changed. What evidence do you have if somebody has a past? It's not. I'm not saying it's from the point of condemnation because people do a great job of condemning themselves. But what kind of evidence do you have that the person's character and the habits that they have had over the years have changed? What kind of evidence? So this is very clearly folks are constantly being triggered. It's the only way that I can put into perspective the amount of women that are enabling and funding and defending known predators without even knowing them, have not listened to them, not cross-reference these people. And actually, when we see this, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous to have people around your children who have not been cross-referenced. They're watching women put their children in front of people um, they have not checked out. And they don't have a history. I had some kind of background on Joseph Robinson, and that wasn't enough. I did research, and that wasn't enough. So you really don't know these people to be opening your body and your mind to them. Anything that asks you to forgive, right, and forget, right, and by that I mean not remembering the wisdom of the situation, not critically assessing, not asking questions, to forget what has happened, to not assess, to get very emotional and just feel sympathy without taking corrective action. I would seriously question, and it's very, very dangerous. Women are particularly vulnerable, or very vulnerable, because we're triggered emotionally. We have lots of empathy. At this point, a lot of times our emotions are what are exploited. Women see babies and children or someone suffering, and we're wide open. We're wide open. It's not hard to manipulate women. So it's definitely folks that are more empathetic. This can go for men too, but definitely for women. Folks that are more empathetic and very feeling, that are very sensitive to the torture or the suffering of others. It's very important to develop healthy boundaries because it's that very nature. There's nothing wrong with having those qualities, but that is one of the main things that is exploited by predators, and it's very, very important for us to understand this. On so many levels. Young women and young men. We're in a time now where there are many older women that may exploit young men. And a lot of folks are wide open with no parental guidance. So this is really something for us to reason with. The whole forgive and forget, pretty much scrapped it. It's not about bitterness. It's really about critical thinking and assessing and results. And a scorpion, that old story of the scorpion, you allow a scorpion a certain space to do certain things, they're going to do what a scorpion does. And we are being very romantic and not really, we're not connecting to the dots to what are the capabilities, what these people, these human beings with certain track record have the capacity to do. They're showing us what they have the capacity to do, or they're hiding from you what they have the capacity to do. Even if you don't know these people online, do your due diligence. And if you can't find stuff on them, you don't. I would say, when in doubt, if I had to tell a young person, when in doubt, leave it out. You don't know people until you are in a certain kind of situation. To be sending all your money to folks who are living on 99 acres of land and your situation may not be straight just because you see a garden and some fruits and vegetables. This stuff doesn't make any sense, but we are constantly being triggered to our heart's desires and our preferences and what we think of the image of a father should look like. You don't know these people. You don't know these people. So again, I invite folks to reason and to put into perspective a healthy, tangible perspective, a perspective that is protective. It makes sense. It is spiritual common sense to be protective of yourself. Be protective of your family and your children and your community. To be protective of folks you can't vet, because we're in an age where folks have all kinds of presentations that they put online, and where they say a lot of fancy words and rhetoric. And whether we want to admit it or not, folks keep using it, keep using these same programs because they work. They've been used for eons because they work. How the Bible has been used to manipulate. Are there truths in there? Yes, there are truths in all these books, but they have all been manipulated to cause hurt and harm. And on a personal level, folks that will be wary of folks that just tell you to forgive and to forget. And you put it into a perspective that is beneficial to yourself first and then to others. Because to forgive someone and you haven't put anything into perspective for yourself, you don't understand the situation, how you were vulnerable, what this person did, then there's no way you can have an appropriate response, or you can inflict an appropriate consequence, that you can mete out and give out an appropriate consequence. Predators only understand a consequence. It's either when they have to face a physical consequence or a financial consequence. So to continue to send money and bail these predators out, we're basically just turning them out on the street to violate more people. And this is something for us to really look at. So it's very, very revealing. So the whole forgive and forget, nah. I say release, put in perspective, and remember so that you gain from the wisdom and you can respond appropriately and in a timely manner when it's needed to keep yourself out of harm's way. When the unexpected happens, you can respond appropriately, proactively, and that you have a voice to the best of your ability, even if it's a dangerous or an emotionally charged situation, you can respond to the best of your ability. But anything that's telling you to forgive and forget and to neutralize your common sense is questionable.